And with that, we'll start. So again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paul Stanford, Director of Grants Administration, and I will be presenting this afternoon the Housing Accelerator Program Pre-Proposal Conference. All right. On the screen now is the schedule for the Housing Accelerator Program, which I know that you all would definitely want to know. So again, you all are aware that the public announcement went out 9/6, as well as the NOFA portal opens. We expect next week, the week of 9/18, the pre-proposal conference, which you all are in today, and the application workshop is October 5th, where you all be able to ask any questions related to the application development for the program, and the application deadline for the program is November 1st. And awarding, we expect to be around late November. What is the Housing Accelerator Program? Through this NOFA, DHCD will make up to $16 million available for the Housing Accelerator Program, and up to $15 million for the ARPA Home Investment Partnership Program to support permanent supportive housing for individuals, families who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, or in other vulnerable positions. Subject to demand, affordable housing project without PSH units will be considered for funding under this NOFA. To be considered for the award, applicants are required to meet threshold requirements and receive a minimum application score of 150 points out of 230, which we will discuss. Applications will be scored and ranked based on project feasibility, community engagement, and achieving equity. There will be additional opportunities to qualify for maximum 65 bonus points. Eligible projects. So with the program, some of the eligible projects that you all can apply for to use the funds will be to close financial gaps, to allow potential project with supportive housing units to proceed to development, secure set-asides of supportive housing units within housing projects already under development through equity investments, and provide financing to develop new projects and enable their competition for other financing through pre-development financing, grants, or loans. Eligible applicants. This NOFA is limited to applicants that are either nonprofit, for-profit, or joint ventures that are seeking funds to create units accessible and dedicated for permanent supportive housing populations and other affordable housing projects. Affordability restrictions. So within this program, there are affordability restrictions that you must follow if you was to receive funding to develop units. And those affordability restrictions is that for all units funded through the Housing Accelerator Program, the units must restrict leasing and occupancy of those units for a period of at least 30 years to households that have incomes that do not exceed 30% of the area median income. Eligible uses of the funds. Home ARP funds are available to support the hard costs of eligible projects. Housing Accelerator funds are available to support both the hard and soft costs of eligible projects. Applications will be evaluated for eligibility under both Home ARP and Housing Accelerator funds, and applicants are encouraged to outline why one funding source may be more appropriate for their project than the other. And as you all see here, what we provided was a chart that breaks down the eligible uses for the funds. So for the Housing Accelerator Program, you're allowed to use the funds for architecture and engineering, environmental assessment and testing, market and financial feasibility analysis, carrying costs, zoning analysis, staff time, development consultants, legal fees associated with closing financing and drafting legal documents necessary for development, and hard development of hard construction costs. For Home ARP, the funds you are only able to use to use this program for is for the development of hard construction costs. Ineligible uses of funds. So we have here a list of ineligible uses for the programs, and that is acquisition of city-owned properties, acquisition of properties through receivership, acquisition of projects through tax sale, staff that are not directly related to pre-development, construction, or maintenance of the project general operating costs such as rent, utilities, and operating supplies, relocation, repayment of existing loans or liens, community gardens or urban architectural uses, projects that support a specific religious or other affiliation, commercial, retail, or economic development uses, and costs associated with preparation of this NOFA submission. How to apply. So as you all know, if you apply with us before for our NOFAs through this department, that's handled through the Neighborly software program. So for the Housing Accelerator program, only electronic submissions through Neighborly application portal will be accepted. Applicants must submit one complete online submission of their application. Applications are due by 4:30 p.m. Eastern on November 11, 2023. And for those who have not used Neighborly or just want a refresher how to use Neighborly, I have my colleague, Ms. Casey Chisholm, who will go over the Neighborly application process to have you have a better understanding on how to submit an application through Neighborly. Casey, the floor is yours.
Sorry, the first thing is that I need to unmute my microphone. Apologies. The first thing that you will need to do in order to complete your application is you need to know where to go. I am putting the link in the chat for you as well. But you're going to navigate to portal.neighborlysoftware.com/Baltimore MD /participant. When you go there, you will then be taken to the next screen. Paul, can you hit my next slide?
Yep.
The first thing you'll need to do is either register or sign in. If you've previously used Neighborly to apply for any of our other programs, things like Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Community Catalyst grants, anything that you have done through Baltimore City grants, you can use your same login. You do not need to have a different login or different email. So if you have a previous account, go ahead and just sign in. If you don't have an account with us through our Neighborly instance, then you would just click to register. The next thing you'll have to do is select to start a new application. As Paul said, the application for this program is not yet live. It's expected to go live during the week of September 18th. So if you were to navigate to this landing page right now, you would not see this application available. That's because it's not yet open. Starting the week of the 18th, when you come here, you will see the list of all options for open applications that you can choose to fill in. You'll find the one that you're looking for and then click the blue link that says click here to start a new application. And when you do so, you'll get the next screen. Once you have begun your application, you will have to navigate the application and complete any and all information that is requested of you. A few things I'd like to point out just for your own ease for navigation. At any time during your application, if you click the home button, it will take you back to your participant portal. Your participant portal is where you will be able to access any and all of your applications for any of our DHCD programs that you've completed via Neighborly application. There is a button that says add users, view users. Very often we have people ask if they can have multiple users involved in one application. Perhaps you have more than one stakeholder who needs to come into the Neighborly application in order to make edits and revisions. Through that button, you can add as many other users as necessary in order to complete your application. There is also the option to print your application or save it as a PDF. But ultimately, you're just going to utilize that left sidebar to navigate to each piece of your application. As you complete each stage of your application, you'll get a green check mark to indicate that it was properly completed. Next. It's very important that you only submit your application when you are fully complete. Please note that once an application is submitted, the only way that it can be edited or revised is if the administrator goes back and manually reopens your application for you. That said, you may absolutely complete your application in stages. Just make sure that at the bottom of each page, you're selecting save and not complete and submit. Save to come back later, submit when you're done. If you are saving and stopping and coming back, you do need to know how to find your application. The next time you log in to the participant page, you will see a list of your existing applications that you can then view. You can see the status. Are they in progress? Are they submitted? You have the option to view or edit, and you'll also see things like expiration and other information about your application itself. Just one other thing, as you complete your application, if you do have any issues, I'm going to actually put my email in the chat for you. If you're having a neighborly specific questions, you can either reach out to the Housing Accelerator program email or to me, and I'm happy to help provide technical assistance as you go.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. And for those on the call, one thing about Neighborly is very user friendly. And we've received nothing but great compliments from those who have applied for NOFAs using Neighborly. So for those who have not used that, just wanted to let you know that it's a pretty simple software program to use to apply for NOFAs with DHCD. So with that, I go over to the next slide. So application, scoring, and bonus points. So once you all are getting your application together, just know that the application will consist of 4 parts: threshold requirements, financial review, scoring criteria, and signed certifications and authorizations. Threshold review. Threshold review includes organizational, financial, and compliance-related documentation and is used to determine whether an application is eligible for review. Examples of threshold requirements in this NOFA include, but is not limited to, commitment to comply with the city's minority and women's business participation and local hiring requirements, and being in good standing with the state of Maryland and meeting the fund requirements. Applicants must include all of the threshold on the threshold checklist, or the application will be determined to be ineligible for review. DHCD will notify applicants electronically whether their application has met threshold review and will post an updated summary on its website. And again, the threshold required documents will be outlined in the application as well. And one of those documents that is in that threshold requirement is the CSH Commitment to Quality Checklist. And Pamela from CSH will discuss briefly what that form or what that checklist is. Pam?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Paul. Again, my name is Pamela Agava, Senior Program Manager with CSH, the Corporation for Supportive Housing. Really excited to see all of you here and your interest in development of PSH units to meet the need that exists in Baltimore. We're excited to be partnering with DHCD and look forward to seeing your applications. So we recognize that PSH, Permanent Supportive Housing, may be new to some of you all. And so what CSH does is focus on education and training to help you get where you need to be. In order to assess that need of education and training that you may need, we have the Commitment to Quality Checklist, which you will download from your application. And what it is a checklist around our standards of quality permanent supportive housing, and it has specific elements that you would need to meet for each standard. And so it's a checklist, just as we imagine a checklist, and what you'll check is, yes, my project already includes that, or my project partially includes that, or I would need assistance in adding that to my project. So essentially, the no category, right? So again, you click yes, my project already has those elements that you're describing in the checklist. My project partially has those elements. It has some of the elements, but not all of them. And then the last option that you can select is I would need assistance in adding these elements to my project. And so that will help us understand who may need a little bit of support in adding PSH to their project development. Um, again, this is a part of your threshold review, and so you want to make sure you complete it to the best of your ability. We also left a comment section for each quality standard that we have, so that you can explain if you only have it partially, if you only meet the standard partially, you can explain what parts you do have, what parts you don't have. If you're needing technical assistance or education and training, you can explain specifically where you feel like you need the most support. And if you do have it, you can still give us a overview of how you've incorporated it to your project. In the chat, I'm going to drop in my email address so that anybody who has any questions specific to the CSH Commitment to Quality Checklist can email the CSH team and we can respond to you directly.
Great, thank you, Pam. And for those on the call as well, the checklist will be added to the Neighborly application. So with the application for the NOFA, you will be able to download that checklist directly from Neighborly once you create your application. So from there, you can Neighborly has the ability to allow you to download different documents that's required for an application, and that is one of the documents that's in there that you'll be able to download in there. And then for those who did not attend the session earlier this week with CSH to go over the PSH units, there's a link at the end of this chat of the YouTube presentation of that. So just want to let you all know that if you missed that session, which was very informative about PSH, you still have the opportunity to view that session based on it being already on YouTube. Just wanted to mention that. Okay, so going back to the presentation of the scoring criteria. So again, once you all submit your application, the team goes through a scoring review process, which applications that meet all the threshold criteria will be scored and evaluated according to the following criteria: project feasibility, which has a maximum points of 70, management plan, 25 maximum points, number of PSH units, permanent supportive housing units, 20 maximum points, community engagement and participation with permanent supportive housing community. So just having already resources or connection within the permanent supportive housing community, that would give you a maximum of 25 points. Achieving equity, 25 maximum points. And as mentioned earlier, there's an opportunity to receive bonus points for both home housing accelerator and home ARP applications of up to 65 points. Score criteria is intended to ensure that awards are made to proposals that meet the fund's criteria, are designed to have a demonstrated impact on reducing homelessness, can leverage other resources of funds, complete projects providing supportive housing units, can meet city, state, and private lenders' underwriting criteria, and can be completed in a reasonable time frame. Project feasibility. DHCD will determine whether projects are ready to proceed and that the applicant has the experience, staff, and consultants in place to ensure a successful outcome. The requested information must demonstrate that the projects are ready to proceed and can be completed within 24 months time frame of executing a funding agreement with DHCD, also known as our grant agreements. Management. Additional consideration shall be given to development teams with a reputable management team and experience developing projects with permanent supportive housing units. Developers must include the name of the management company, a list of the management company's current projects, and current resumes from the management company's development team. The management team will need to be able to ensure compliance of subsidy of the units and day-to-day management of the units. Number of permanent supportive housing units, 20 maximum points. Projects that incorporates units dedicated to permanent supportive housing units must commit to a leasing preference of 25% of units for people referred through Baltimore's coordinated access system. To maximize the number of dedicated permanent supportive housing units produced through this funding, projects that commit more units will receive priority for funding. Achieving equity, 25 maximum points. DACD is committed to using funds to reduce the financial, social, and economic disparities that have affected many of the city's neighborhoods and residents over the past several decades. DACD is also committed to reducing the number of homeless residents living in the city. To that end, applications will be scored based on location, support of blight elimination, i.e. demolition or rehab, providing supportive housing units, providing priority to returning citizens, and supporting and building residents' ability to create equity as well as wealth. Bonus points. So again, as we mentioned earlier, there is a requirement of affordability restrictions, but the longer that you have affordability within your projects for units funded with the Housing Accelerator and Home ARP, the more bonus points you get. So for long-term affordability, up to 15 points. Organizations that and or developed by Black developers, up to 15 points. Project readiness and ability to complete the project in line with performance timeline of Accelerator program funding timelines, up to 10 points. Support and grows local businesses, up to 5 points. Takes advantage of apprentice and training programs, 5 points. Local hiring criteria, up to 5 points. Environmental sustainability, 5 points. And an organization that's qualified as a CHODO organization, 5 points. Reviewing and awarding funds. Application will be reviewed by an interagency committee with experience in affordable housing, PSH development, and finance. Applications that meet the threshold criteria will be reviewed, scored, and ranked by a committee who, at their discretion, may submit written requests for additional information, request applicant interviews, or tour the proposed project sites. The committee will provide recommendations to the Deputy Commissioner, who will review and submit to the Housing Commissioner, the DACD Housing Commissioner. The Housing Commissioner, at his or her discretion, sole discretion, shall have the ability to determine final award amounts. Underwriting and availability of funds. Following written notification of an award, DACD staff will schedule an initial meeting with the applicant to review the schedule, the project schedule, and how the funds will be made available. During this meeting, staff will review the agency's underwriting requirements and will work with the applicant to discuss and develop a project schedule. Applicants are advised that no funds shall be made available until such time as the Board of Estimates, BOE, has granted approval and transactional documents have been issued by the department. Monitoring and compliance and reporting. All awardees will be required to submit progress reports for projects under construction detailing the following: percentages of the project that are complete, reason if the project is not on schedule, percentages of MBE, WBE goals met, local hiring update, and percentages of local employees and apprenticeship awardees are advised that failure to submit reports and information in a timely manner could result in a state of default, loss of funds, and disqualifications from seeking funds in the future NOFAs, as well as Mayor Office of Recovery Programs, aka MORP, reporting requirements. Insurance. All awardees will be required to provide evidence of insurance prior to DACD issuing a letter of commitment. Insurance requirements will be provided on a project basis and often include the following: director and officer liability insurance, commercial general liability, errors and omission, consultants, blanket crime coverage, automobile coverage, and payment and performance bonds. Miscellaneous information. Award amounts. Final award amounts are determined by the Housing Commissioner. DACD reserves the right to make an award of funds in amount other than what is requested in the NOFA. All awards are subject to final underwriting by DACD and approval by the city's Board of Estimates. Incurring expenses. Neither the City of Baltimore nor DACD will be responsible for any cost incurred by any applicant in preparing and submitting an application in response to this NOFA. Compliance with the law. By submitting the application, applicants agree that they will comply with federal, state, and city laws, rules and regulations, and ordinance applicable to its activities and obligations under this program. In Public Information Act notice, DHCD commits to handling all information regarding financial assets in the strictest of confidence. Applicants should give specific attention to identifying any portion of the application that they deem to be confidential or trade secrets, and provide justification why such material should be disclosed by DHCD under the Maryland Public Information Act, SS 1-061 of the State Government Article Annotated Code of Maryland upon request by the public. And as mentioned earlier in this presentation, Pamela from CSH, they held a permanent supportive housing one-on-one presentation, which if you did not attend or would like to learn more about it, or if you did attend and would like to receive more information about permanent supportive housing, I would highly recommend you to review that presentation, which is in the link below. Well, that's in the link right here on your screen, because again, that's a great presentation that will allow you to understand what permanent supportive housing units are. And again, CSH are experts in the field of permanent supportive housing, so they're the best resource that you would go to have any questions or to learn more about permanent supportive housing units. And with that, thank you all for attending this presentation. And now we will be able to address some of the questions that were outlined in the chat. So again, thank you all. Good luck throughout this process. And as you all know, for those who have worked with DHCD before, we provide that assistance throughout the entire process as you apply for the NOFAs by giving you presentations like this, responding to inquiries, as well as hosting additional webinars for you to be able to answer any questions related to application development. So again, thank you all.
Paul, how would you like to do this? Do you want me to go through the questions kind of from the beginning? I'm not sure how you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, if you can go through some of the questions from the beginning, that'd be great.
Okay, just give me 1 second.
And again, if there's some questions I can't answer, we'll be able to provide responses to those questions after this presentation. But then also we have other members that's been working on this program who's here as a resource to be able to address some of the questions that you all have as well.
And I've been trying to capture as well some of the responses that have been coming in as well. So just give me 1 quick moment. I'm catching up with some of the responses that people have been providing. All right, I'm just going to start at the top. Someone wanted to confirm that a developer can submit an application for funding even if they are not setting aside units for PSH. And Lori confirmed that that is correct.
Yes, that's
correct. A follow-up question to that was, can we submit 2 grant applications, one for development with PSH units and another without?
No.
Okay.
Organization are only able to submit 1 application.
Okay, and so that I do want to clarify because someone had previously asked, can applicants apply for more than 1 project? To which Lori replied yes. So I just want to clarify.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if Lori, yeah, you can.
So let me clarify. So the idea, the question, I answered yes, contemplating 2 projects at different locations.
Okay.
So there were frequent, one of the most frequent questions that I have seen is asking about how many applications or how many projects they may apply for. So if you could just speak a little bit as to
Yep.
what that might look like, because we have seen a variety of different types of that same iteration of that question.
Right, right. So if you're applying for a specific project, we have not put a cap on the number of projects you may apply for. So if you have 3 projects in your pipeline and you're looking to round out your capital stack for those projects, then you're free to submit applications for those 3 projects. Paul responded no to a specific question of whether you could submit 2 applications for the same address, one that did not have PSH units and one that did have PSH units.
Yeah, thanks for clearing that up for me, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
We had quite a few people ask if this presentation, PowerPoint and recording would be available to attendees, and I believe the answer is yes for that. Registrants, if you registered, you'll be emailed the information once it's ready to be disseminated.
Yep, and it'll be available on DHCD's website as well.
How does 30% AMI translate to a rental amount and for a sale price?
Are they asking as far as what the
I'm not
rent
sure.
will be?
DHCD Maryland.gov actually has like the Maryland income and rent limits for Baltimore City. Just off the top, looking at the chart, like Baltimore City's 30%, let's say a 1-person household is at $24,400, and that max rent would be $610. But it's a whole chart that breaks down from households, 1-person, 2-person, 3-person, 4-person. If you want to go to that dhcds.maryland.gov website.
Great, thank you, Steph.
Yeah, and let's make a note to add that into the FAQs. Okay.
I'm sorry, what am I making a note of, Lori?
To add the reference to DHCD Maryland's website where you can look at the affordability targets based on AMI.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make sure I was capturing the right thing for you.
Yep.
Can funds be used for acquisition of privately owned property?
So I did respond to that, and can we pull up the eligible and ineligible uses slide again? When we designed the program, we only contemplated pre-development cost and hard construction costs. And so we did not contemplate you using our dollars to acquire the property. There may be some restrictions, especially on the recovery program side, about the use of funds for acquisition. So I'll need to go back and check the rules regarding the ARPA dollars. So let's make a note to address that in our FAQ. And the same goes for earnest money deposits.
That's the next question. So it's perfect, Lori.
Yeah, so one thing that I'd like to really emphasize is that due to the spending requirements associated with the ARPA program, we have to actually make awards and enter into grant agreements with awardees no later than 12/31/2024. So those projects that are already moving along in their development timeline will be scored higher than those that are at the very early stage. So if the application if the application shows that you don't have site control and that you need our funds for earnest money deposit, you know, that's probably not going to be a very strong application. With that being said, we do have another funding program. It'll be a smaller NOFA that we hope to release within the next 30 days. And that funding stream is for more early stage pre-development projects, or it's for more early stage development projects where the developer is in the very early stages of their development process. And earnest money deposit might be an eligible use for that source. But that is not this NOFA. This NOFA is really intended for projects that are further along in their development process. And you'll remember that Paul mentioned we do have a eligible use of funds of late stage pre-development with a cap of 500,000 per project. And so it's those later stage pre-development costs that we're looking to fund, not the very early ones. And I would classify earnest money deposit as a very early stage pre-development cost.
Lori, as a follow-up to that, while you were discussing that piece, someone said, how will where you are in the development stage be scored, and in which section is that scored?
We will have to go up. I'm not sure what exact section it is, but we can put that information into the FAQ about project readiness and the importance of it. I think that would be helpful to the whole group.
Yeah, so Laura, to follow up on your response, so it'd be in the project feasibility section, where we'll be able to review when do they plan on having everything complete with the project completed, because again, the goal is to have the project be completed within 24-month time frame of the executed grant agreement or funding agreement.
All right, moving along, and again, everybody, for the most part, I'm just going in the order that these questions were asked.
Sure.
So if your question hasn't come up yet, we are getting to it. And I am trying to combine questions together that seemed to ask the same thing. So if I do miss over yours, please just remind us in the chat and we'll come back to it. There was another question about which AMI you're using. I think we already addressed that we're gonna clarify that in the FAQ. The NOFA recommends that developers should seek out project-based assistance for PSH units. What if the community you are building in doesn't meet neighborhood standards to receive Section 8? Lori, you did respond to that about awards using MORP funds.
Right. So we have two separate pots of money. One is the ARPA money from the city, which is MORP, our Mayor's Office of Recovery Program. And then the other source is from HUD's Home Art Program. So the Accelerator program, which is funding from the city, has fewer restrictions, and we're not required to meet site and neighborhood standards for that roughly 1/2 of the $30 million. On the other side, for HUD Home Art, definitely projects have to be meet site and neighborhood standards.
And then there was a follow-up to your initial response, which was, how does the developer get the subsidy? Apologies. How does the developer get the subsidy to support these units, which is 0 to 15%?
Yep. Yeah. And that's the challenge of finding a way and a source of rental subsidy that allows the project to cash flow. Fundraising There may be additional sources, you know, that you can tap into, but we're looking to you, you know, the community to find creative ways to bring that additional subsidy to the project. Our idea, as we were designing the program, is that, you know, by providing this money in the form of a grant, it would free up your fundraising. It would free up your lending. Let's say you would have, if not for this money, you would have to have a $1 million loan. So if we're providing subsidy in the form of a grant, then that allows you perhaps to be able to attract more subsidy dollars. We're looking to you all for creative ways to fill that gap. As we were talking with stakeholders, there was a desire for funding to be made available to projects that do not meet site and neighborhood standards. So we wanted to make sure that we have that here.
Got it.
Another question about AMI, does Home ARP and Housing Accelerator have the same AMI restrictions?
Paul, you want to take that? Or, I mean, I'm
Yes.
happy to do it too.
Yeah, so I'll answer for the Housing Accelerator. So Housing Accelerator, no more than 30% of the area median income. And if
Right.
a home is 0 to 15, is that correct, Lori?
We're going to address that in an FAQ. I think the HUD Home ARP is more nuanced. It takes into account income levels and rents in the area. And so I think it's better to address that and give an example in the FAQ. But the AMIs do differ for each.
For new applicants who are new to this process, is there any type of sample application that they can see?
For the NOFA or permanent supportive housing?
I'm not clear. That's just what they had typed in the chat.
Right.
Well, one
I
recommendation.
will say, so this is a new program, so there are no previous exemplars because this is a new program and we don't have previous applications to refer to. So in that sense, no.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with that. Now we do have available online now the contents that will be part of the application for this NOFA. So that is available now on our on DHCD's website, where you can take a look at the PDF version or contents of the NOFA, what's its requirements, more information about the NOFA. But again, that information will be transferred over to the neighborly application, which at that point you will be able to fill in specific property project information for the project that you're requesting funding for.
Someone asked, PHS units must follow a housing first model to fill vacancy. How does this not validate fair housing because homelessness is not a protect class? Pamela replied with a response about the housing first model not being federally or legally required, which does not violate FHA. I'm not sure if you wanted to speak to that any further.
Sure, just making it clear that everyone understands that the housing first model is a model about accessibility. And so there are best practices there, but housing first as a model does not violate fair housing. And then I think there's another question that's going to come up pretty soon in regards, also in regards to the population, the total population being, I believe, all returning citizens or all veterans, subject to any local regulations around that. You could still follow a housing first model and work with coordinated access to fill those units.
Thank you, Pam.
Can you apply project-based vouchers and the funds PSH units within the application or separately? Will the project-based vouchers work the same, or will they be viewed differently based on the units being PSH?
So I can let me take a stab at that. And I think Kevin Gallagher from HABC is on the call, and he has been part of our working group. In the application, you should find a link to the RFP for HABC's voucher program. And we are encouraging everyone who intends to use vouchers to apply for them at the same time that they're submitting their application for this NOFA. Projects that are, where applications are submitted to HABC will be reviewed, and our intent is to work with HABC such that if the project itself is eligible in an eligible location, that they may be able to, upon their review of site and neighborhood standards, they may be able to issue a letter of interest, a letter of intent, subject to, a lot of conditions, including that the project is funded by our programming. So we don't have a specific number of vouchers that have been set aside and, dedicated to this program. However, we do understand that that's a very important part of the project. And we hope to have input from HABC on the viability of your application for vouchers during our review process.
And Lori, Kevin is here, so I think he can also just clarify.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm not sure if we added you as a host. Hold on for a second. Let me see if we can unmute you.
Yeah,
Kevin,
I'm
are you here?
unmuted.
Okay, great. Thank
So,
you.
yeah, they will have to apply separately. I put into the chat where our RFP is for vouchers. As Lori said, we will work with DHCD if someone is not meeting site and neighborhood standards, but there are still HUD standards that we have to abide by. So it will depend on, the actual score of the RFP, but it will have to be applied for separately via HABC.
Thank you, Kevin.
Another person asked a question about why there are both performance and payment bonds. They said, why both performance and payment bonds?
Yeah, so again, that's a risk management requirement. So if you are awarded those funds, that'll be a conversation that you can have with risk management to go over based on your project. You can go over some of those coverage requirements based on the project. So again, that's totally a requirement of the city's risk management department, and you will have the opportunity to discuss your project with the risk management to determine which coverage amounts and coverages that you would need for your project.
Yeah, and I would just add that payment and performance bonds are required for all of our capital projects. So we have a variety of capital programs, and where construction is a use of funds, we do require the payment and performance bonds. Of course, there may be exceptions, but I would start with it being a standard requirement.
Is the commitment to quality checklist required for projects that are 100% affordable with no PSH units?
I don't think there's any harm to completing that. That checklist is not an element of the application that will be scored. Our reason for including that checklist is, overall, this is a permanent supportive housing program. The only reason we would use funds outside of permanent supportive housing units is if we don't have enough demand. We are interested in understanding where our stakeholders, our development community is in terms of their knowledge base of permanent supportive housing, and trying to gauge whether or not some additional technical assistance, either on a one-on-one basis or in a webinar format, may be helpful, so that as a city, we have a view towards increasing the supply of permanent supportive housing units. So, I don't. I would suggest that you include it. I don't know if we would deem you as incomplete, but I'm thinking we probably would want to add that if we don't already have it. I'd really like everyone to do it. So I'm going to say, it's a one pager. It's not a heavy lift. It's not scored. So please submit it.
Can the housing units be scattered site developments?
There's no restriction that it's not eligible, so yes.
How is it determined whether or not an organization is Black-led or owned?
Self-identify.
Or is it via the MBE office? Like, is it if they're registered? I'm not sure. Okay. Do PSH units include development of single affordable housing units?
Can you repeat that?
Do PSH units include development of single affordable housing units?
So if you look at the project types that are eligible, we have single family homes and multifamily. And, single family is defined as 1 to 4. So technically, yes. So, yeah.
Can you clarify what the leasing preference, the 25% of units referred through coordinated access means? Does that mean if you have 100 unit, sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding this question. Can you speak a little bit more about the leasing preference and the 25%? I'm a little unclear on what the question is asking, but it looks like they're looking for more clarification on that aspect.
Yeah, so I went over to the slide where it has that information on here. So again, projects that incorporates units dedicated to PSH units must commit a leasing preference of 25% of units for people referred through Baltimore's coordinated access system. So like Lori mentioned, is that, we're partnering with several different groups within the agency, and and I believe Mork, they're the ones that is responsible for Baltimore coordinated access, to my understanding. If not, please correct me, but 25% of the people for those units must be referred through the Baltimore coordinated access system. Casey, you muted.
Sorry. things got a little loud at my house, so I had to close the door. How would coordinated access referrals provide preference to returning citizens for a project that is 100% PSH for returning citizens?
So I think I can help answer this question. PSH is a designation that often comes through coordinated access. And so there's a combination of other agencies that would be involved in determining and referring tenants to PSH. So what you could be saying is that your building is targeting returning citizens, and then also indicating the leasing preference for those with PSH. And so in your application selection criteria, those who have both of those distinctions, i.e. being a returning citizen and they've gone through coordinated access and they have been designated as a candidate for permanent supportive housing, would be higher in your selection criteria for a tenant than someone who only has one of those or none of those. So hopefully that makes it clear. And then also to back up to the leasing preference, we're using the leasing preference as another means of ensuring that for developers who are not sure how to access tenants who are in the permanent supportive housing program or are not able to access project-based vouchers, that there is to point them towards another means of being able to access a continuous pipeline of tenants who are already ready and designated for supportive housing.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you for that.
Great. Yes, thank you for that clarification. Lori, I do just want to note that there have continued to be multiple questions regarding if you're allowed to have multiple projects, separate projects, at how many locations, things like that. So I'm just gonna put a pin in that and say that we'll have some further clarification about
Absolutely.
that in the FAQ. So I do just want to make sure people know that if you do still have questions about exactly how many projects and things like that, further clarification will be coming on that. We're not skipping over it. We see that that's been a high interest question.
Right, and continue, if you have more detailed questions, put as much detail and examples in the chat so we can more fully respond to this issue. Thank you.
And we may not discuss it like right now, but we'll come back to those to try to address all of the nuances in that FAQ doc.
That's right.
Do the properties need to be located in opportunity zones?
No.
Is there any kind of resource list for people who might be available to assist in writing the proposal or grant application?
No. Mm-mm.
Someone asked for some clarification on what exactly is the home ARP.
So HUD, in response to COVID, HUD made a special one-time allocation of additional dollars nationwide to address those at risk of homelessness. So we, along with the state, along with other jurisdictions here in Maryland, received an allocation that's a one-time allocation, and it's only available for the funding of hard construction costs. And the funding for HUD has a longer expiration. So our goal would be to fund projects using Home ARP first. And then, I'm sorry, our preference would be to use the Housing Accelerator first. It's less restrictive. It doesn't have HUD's federal requirements attached to it. And once those funds are depleted, then we would move to funding from the Home ARP program.
For clarity, can you or can you not use funds to purchase vacant housing from the city for rehabilitation for affordable housing?
I'm gonna throw that to Paul. That's a
So the answer to that question is no. And we addressed that in the presentation, which I can go to slide here and show you. So ineligible uses, as you see here, acquisition of city-owned properties, or acquisition of properties through receivership, acquisition of properties through tax sale.
Are there complementary NOFAs out or expected to come out soon that could help fund supportive services?
So, we have at DHCD, we have multiple funding streams, and we are looking at potentially using some of those funding streams as a source for supportive services. So yes, I don't have any specifics. I don't have the timing yet. So, I'm just thinking about, like, as you all are putting together, your proposals and thinking about, where these various sources of funds are going to come from, we won't have an answer to that during the application period. But we may have something, early next year that would provide a source of subsidy for supportive services. But, I don't have any specifics, so you can't really build it into your program at this time or into your project this time, unfortunately.
It was stated in the news release that up to $100,000 per unit for traditional affordable housing would be available. Does that include projects for affordable homeownership, or are there different requirements?
So this program is strictly rental. So there is no homeownership component to this program.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen a few questions. Is there a designated amount of funding per unit?
So there's not a hard number. You may have seen that 250 up to 250. That's sort of our thinking. You'll notice we do not have a funding cap either. This is a new program. This is the first time the city has really ventured into such a large initiative around permanent supportive housing. And so we'll be looking at the projects, quality projects, if they require that 250, and, they make a strong case that it's a very high quality permanent supportive housing, then we may go up to that amount. So we're trying to keep our funding flexible.
Okay. Page 10 of the NOFA talks about the kinds of site control evidence. One example was written documentation that a case was filed for receivership. Can you clarify that for us? Because acquisition of properties in receivership was an ineligible use of funds.
Yeah, that may be a technical issue that we have to address and correct. Thank you.
Do these funds apply to CHAP eligible properties?
I don't know the answer to that, but we'll get back to you with an answer.
Lori,
Yes.
to kind of tap onto that page 10 of the NOFA,
Mhm.
the ineligible use is that they can't use the funds to acquire properties that are in receivership. So them having site control using receivership is different. So, and then if I may say that
Mhm.
would be like on, you know, when you're reviewing the application, you should want to take that into consideration when we're talking about having the project done within 24 months, you know, due to receivership taking a long time to go through. So, but that's not the same as the ineligible request.
Use. Okay. So let's add that, and thank you, Stephanie, for that clarification. So let's make sure that we write that down in the FAQs. And I also want to make sure we tie it to you know, the 12/31/2024 deadline.
Mhm.
What if I have a property already in use that is 100% occupied by homeless clients, and I'm looking for expansion or upgrades to that property?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What if I already have a property that's in use and 100% occupied by homeless clients, and I am looking to expand or upgrade that property?
So if you're expanding, meaning you're creating new units, yesterday I was at a property that had 74 units and they were going up to, they were increasing by 7. So those 7 additional units would be eligible. So if you're adding new units, yes.
Okay.
If let me just also say, if you're going through a substantial rehab and there are units that are currently not restricted or dedicated to PSH, it would be fantastic if you excuse me, would support our efforts to increase access to permanent supportive housing units by converting several of those units to PSH units. And you would be eligible to receive funding under this program to do that. Thanks, Casey.
Oh, sorry. If we have a property with a mortgage, will the rent payment take that into consideration when determining it?
Oh, repeat that for me.
Yeah.
What?
Repeat that for me, please, Casey.
If we have a property with a mortgage, will the rent payment take that into consideration?
No,
No.
the rent has to be at 30% AMI for 30% AMI resident. Your mortgage payment has nothing to do with what the rent that you can have on the unit.
Can the NOFA be used for rehabilitating housing? Can it be used for newly built housing?
Yes.
If an applicant has current supportive housing, would the awarded funds qualify to support that project?
Is the project already completed?
I'm not sure for this one, but there was another question about that, which I'll follow up with. So someone asked, to be clear, is this funding for projects that are already in motion or projects that have not yet begun?
So it could be used for both. When I mentioned, you know, the project that was contemplated as 100% affordable, and there was no discussion about permanent supportive housing units being part of the mix. If that organization is interested in converting some of those units to permanent supportive housing, then we would consider that.
There were a few questions about, is there a preference, or I think perhaps they're looking for like, is there like a bonus available perhaps? Is there a preference between rehabilitation versus new construction?
No.
No.
Can you please provide an example of a home not meeting the neighborhood standards? There was some confusion about what that meant.
It's not an individual home. The HUD's home program has a list of requirements for a site to meet neighborhood standards. If Kevin is still on the phone, perhaps he can give some additional clarification on that. But the word home does not refer to a residence. Kevin?
Yeah, the site and neighborhood standards, it varies from neighborhood to neighborhood, and it can even vary from block to block. So giving an example, I could say, you know, in a certain section of town, you know, it might not meet standards. Those standards change year to year based on poverty rates and minority rates, and you know, how well schools are doing and that kind of thing. So to say if it's, you know, this house would not meet site neighborhood standards is hard to do without having the address and going through the process.
We had another question about acquisition. Do you already need to own the properties in order to qualify for funding?
Yeah, so there must be evidence, well, at least the evidence of site control. So if you don't have site control at the moment, there needs to be some evidence that you will have plans to acquire the site. And those details are outlined in the application as well on what sources that could be used.
Is there a list of eligible locations?
No, because there's, you know, as long as it's in the city of Baltimore, the projects that you want to apply to use the funds for is eligible, as long as it's within the city.
Okay. There was a question about how do you determine vouchers for your proposed location, but I believe Kevin answered that in the chat for them. During the subsidy layering review is when that voucher process would occur. Currently, I'm a provider that has 2, 3, and 4-bedroom homes that are currently vacant. If approved, what would the model look like from a perspective as to what is compliance-based for zoning and multi-dwelling units?
Casey, can you repeat that for me? That's a long one.
Yeah. Currently, I'm a provider that has homes that are vacant. If approved for this funding, what would that look like from compliance of zoning and multi-dwelling units?
Well, I can attempt to answer that one to be a little bit straightforward with it. So again, when you submit your application, you must detail the entire, you know, information about the project that you are submitting funding for. Again, in our requirements of the project that you're submitting information for, you know, you must obviously need to meet certain city zoning requirements before you even receive funding. So I don't know if that addresses the question or not, but again, you know, some of the requirements to receive funding is, you know, once you submit the application, we'll review what your project is. And then again, with the city itself, you know, you must meet, you know, city requirements when it comes to zoning as well anyways, so.
Is it a requirement to be MBE certified?
Yes, so the city has its MBE, WBE requirements. that you must meet. Now, there are opportunities to get waivers depending on the funding amounts that you receive, but yes, you will be required to meet those requirements as outlined in the grant agreement. And FYI, for those who are still on, we have 10 minutes left. So just giving you a heads up.
Also, just flagging that Kevin is unmuted to answer, I think, one of the questions that was just a couple of questions back.
Oh, please hop in.
So, the question had been before about the voucher rents. So the voucher rents are determined, once we approve you for vouchers, then there's a whole slew of paperwork that has to be done, and that's during the subsidy layering approval that the voucher rents are determined. So there's no way to tell you right now what a voucher rent would be.
Thanks, Kevin.
Who will be the DHCD point person to answer developer questions related to PSH?
So we have a team that's going to be brought along to work with this program. So we have those staff members, and if we have any specific questions in regards to PSH, we have supportive CSH, which Pamela is a part of. She'll be able to assist in answering those questions as well. And earlier she did mention that she left her information in the chat. So definitely feel free to reach out to her if you have any specific questions related to PSH.
And along with that, Paul, another question was, will DHCD zoning office have dedicated people working to ensure the 24-month time frame can be met?
So we haven't made any special any special arrangements with zoning, but that's something we can look at.
And the last question that I have that we haven't addressed, at least in some other variety, was specifically about if they have a boarding house that serves the homeless population, would they be available to get this funding in order to convert that facility into affordable housing?
I mean, that would be great to do. I don't think there's any restriction. Boarding homes just, are not, and SROs are ineligible, as a intended use. But for sure, we would entertain a project that sought to convert those units to permanently supportive housing units.
Oh, another one just came in. If we have a single family property that's going to be used, do we have to have a management company, or can the owner or realtor manage the property?
So, so we talked a little bit about permanent supportive housing and quality permanent supportive housing. And as part of that whole discussion, there is this recognition that permanent supportive housing is different than managing a straight affordable housing project, and that there should be some capacity, either existing or through agreements with providers that have a track record of providing supportive services to residents living in permanently supportive housing units. And that goes for property management team as well. A property management team that has no experience in this space, in our opinion, would not effectively manage the units and provide the support that the tenants in those PSH units would require. So our goal, and as we review applications, we'll be looking at the developers' plan to bring in supportive service providers and property managers who have that expertise or who can buy that expertise via, entering into contracts, MOUs, and things like that. Hope that answers.
If one has a scatter site project in which the intent is home ownership, how can the PSH be considered?
I think that would not be, this would not be an appropriate program. We have other programs that are very, very clearly dedicated to home ownership. So I think looking at our home ownership programs would be a better source of funds.
Yep, and for that person who asked that question, those programs will be our community catalyst grant program, as well as the programs funded through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah, yep, that's true.
Can single units be in a single family residence with a shared common space?
I mean, I think the devil's in the details. You'd have to explain it in the project. If you could put more details in the chat on your project and what your concept is, maybe we can reach out to you individually on that.
Yeah.
And that goes for, for everyone. If, due to the number of people that are on the call, we opted not to allow follow-up questions via the mic. However, I invite you and encourage you to put more detail about your projects and additional follow-up questions in the chat. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll prepare an FAQ for general distribution, but it'll also give us an opportunity to reach out to you to get more details about, the nature of your individual project.
Okay. I think the last question that I see is, will the city provide land to build affordable housing projects on?
No.
Okay. How do I apply for project funding? I will drop the link here for you again. And it's got the dates as well.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, if I'm having meetings all day long.
And so thank you everyone for joining. I did want to let you all know that our application portal, our fingers are crossed that it'll be up and running on the timeline we suggested. However, we didn't want to hold the NOFA back any longer. So I would encourage you to, begin working on your application offline. And then as soon as the portal is open, you'll be able to cut and paste into the application. So please don't wait until the portal is open. A lot of the information that you need, you can start thinking about that and putting, those materials together. Again, if you're interested in the voucher program, this will be a good time to follow the link and begin the application for the voucher program. And then finally, we will likely have another session. Well, we will have another session and we may have more. It's a new program, as I mentioned, and we would like to see tremendous response from the community for these funds. And I'll turn it over to Paul to end. But thank you all for sharing your time with us and for all of the very good questions that we'll get back to you on, and it helps us think more deeply about the program as well. So, Paul?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Kevin. Stephanie, she had to jump off. Thank you all for your contributions today with this presentation. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of folks that initially signed up and registered for it. But for those who did attend, thank you for attending this last hour and a half. So just before I sign off and end the show, on the screen right now, I have the timeline again, like Lori mentioned. Fingers crossed, we hope the application does launch next week. And then also, as far as the application question workshop, we have that on October 5th, and application submission deadline November 1, with the goal of awarding late November 2023. So again, thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of the afternoon, and take care.
Bye-bye.